The fluorescent lights of Walker and Associates buzzed overhead as I stared at the email on my screen, the words blurring together after 5 straight hours of copy editing. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, frozen in place like the rest of my career seemed to be. 3 years as a senior copywriter, and here I was, still wondering if I'd ever break through the invisible ceiling that separated me from the creative director's office. That office, her office, with glass walls that somehow never revealed enough. Claire Bennett stood inside, her silhouette backlit as she gestured animatedly to the board members. Even from this distance, I could see how her long, silver, blonde hair caught the light, how her perfectly tailored blazer accentuated her figure as she moved with the confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was and what she wanted. Earth to Thomas. "Come in, Thomas." Alex waved his hand in front of my face, his eyebrows raised knowingly, admiring the view again. I snapped my attention back to my screen, my face warming, just thinking about the Henderson campaign. I lied, reaching for my coffee mug. Empty. Like my social calendar and apparently my ability to focus on anything but Claire. Right? Alex drawled, perching on the edge of my desk, the same way I think about my tax returns when I stare at my wife. He grinned, lowering his voice. "You know, the office pool is up to 300 now?" I groaned, spinning my chair to face him. "You guys are still betting on whether I'll ask her out. That's borderline harassment," says the guy who spent 3 years memorizing her coffee order, lunch preferences, and probably her shoe size. Alex leaned closer. "Look, Parker just put in 50 saying you'll never do it. And I've got 100 riding on you growing a spine before Christmas. She's our boss, Alex. Our direct supervisor. The person who signs our performance reviews." I gestured toward the glass office where Claire was now ending her meeting, shaking hands with the board members as they filed out. When she smiled, something inside my chest tightened. That smile had the power to light up our entire floor, professional but warm, confident but approachable. A contradiction, like everything else about her. And she's single, and you're single, and everyone in this office is tired of watching you two dance around whatever this is. Alex stood, straightening his tie. It's been 3 years of meaningful glances and late night work sessions. Either ask her out or transfer departments so I can win my money back on something else. As Alex walked away, Claire emerged from her office, making her way toward our section of the floor. My heart hammered against my ribs as it did every time she approached. I quickly looked down at my keyboard, pretending to type something important. "Morning, team?" Claire said, her voice carrying that slight rasp that made every word sound like a secret. "Thomas, do you have the Henderson copy ready?" The client moved the deadline up. I looked up, meeting those impossible blue, gray eyes. "Just finishing the last section now. I can have it on your desk in 20. She smiled, not the polished professional smile she gave the board members, but something smaller, something that felt like it belonged just to me. "Perfect. Join me in my office when you're done. I want to go over it together." "Of course." I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. As Claire walked away, I caught Alex making exaggerated kissing motions from across the room. I shot him a glare, but my mind was already racing ahead to the closed door meeting. Just the two of us, going over copy line by line, as we'd done countless times before. Her leaning over my shoulder, close enough that I could catch the scent of her perfume, something subtle and expensive that I'd never been able to identify, but would recognize anywhere. The way she'd tap her pen against her bottom lip when she was thinking, a habit I found endlessly distracting. The Henderson copy took me 15 minutes to finish, record time considering how scattered my thoughts were. I printed it, tucked it into a folder, and stood, smoothing down my shirt. In the reflection of my dark computer screen, I ran a hand through my dark brown hair, trying to tame it into something presentable. 3 years at one of Boston's top advertising agencies had taught me that appearance mattered, even if my sense of humor often undercut the polished facade I tried to maintain. Walking to Claire's office felt like crossing a tightrope. Each step brought me closer to the woman who'd become the focal point of my professional and personal thoughts. Claire Bennett, 30, 4 to my 31. Accomplished, brilliant, and absolutely off-limits. I knocked on her door frame, the glass walls making the gesture more symbolic than necessary. She looked up from her computer, that small smile appearing again. "Come in, close the door." Those 4 words never failed to send a jolt through me. I stepped inside, shutting the door behind me, acutely aware of how the noise of the office faded away, leaving us in a bubble of quiet intensity. I handed her the folder and took my usual seat across from her desk. "I added a new tagline on page 3, I said, watching as she opened the folder. "Something more direct for the millennial audience they're targeting." Claire nodded, her eyes scanning the words I'd spent hours crafting. Her finger traced along a particular line, and something like approval flickered across her face. "This is good, Thomas. Really good." She looked up, her gaze holding mine for a beat longer than necessary. "You always know exactly what to say on paper." The emphasis wasn't lost on me. On paper, as opposed to in person, where I fumbled and froze whenever our conversations veered away from work. I cleared my throat, attempting to channel some of that confidence I supposedly possessed in my writing. "I'm considering submitting it for the Davis Award," I said. "If you think it's strong enough." Claire set down the folder, leaning forward slightly. "I think you should. In fact, I was going to suggest it." She paused, then added, "You know, you could be sitting in this office someday, if you wanted." The words hung between us, laden with meaning I couldn't quite decipher. Was she suggesting a promotion? Or something more? Before I could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced down and frowned. "It's William Trask," she said, naming the agency's biggest client and biggest headache. "I need to take this, but we're not finished with this conversation." She picked up the phone, her professional mask sliding back into place, and I took that as my cue to leave. As I walked back to my desk, Alex intercepted me, practically vibrating with excitement. "Well, did you do it? Did you ask her out?" I shook my head, sinking into my chair. "It was a work meeting, Alex. About copy, for a client." "Coward," he said. "But there was no real malice in it. Look, we're all going to Harlow's after work for Parker's birthday. Claire's coming too. No excuses, you're joining us, and by the end of the night you're asking her out, or I'm doing it for you." The threat landed like a stone in my stomach. "You wouldn't." Alex's grin was pure mischief. "Try me, Thomas. Some of us want to retire on our betting winnings." I watched him saunter away, leaving me with a choice that felt impossible. Ask out Claire Bennett, my boss, and the woman I'd been silently falling for since my first day at Walker & Associates, or let Alex, with his complete lack of subtlety, do it for me. Neither option seemed like a path to continued employment. The day crawled by, each minute ticking down to what felt increasingly like professional suicide. By 6 o'clock, most of the office had emptied, people filtering out toward Harlow's, the upscale bar around the corner that had become our unofficial headquarters for celebrations. I shut down my computer, gathering my courage along with my coat. Like if you've ever been in this impossible situation? Sometimes the hardest part is taking that first step. Claire emerged from her office, just as I was preparing to leave, her hair now loose around her shoulders, blazer replaced with a leather jacket that transformed her from formidable boss to someone I'd be too intimidated to approach at a bar. "Heading to Parker's thing?" she asked, falling into step beside me as we walked toward the elevators. "Yeah," I said, pressing the down button. "Apparently my attendance is mandatory." The corner of her mouth twitched up. "Mine too. Parker personally invited me. Said something about making sure the whole team was there." The elevator doors opened, and we stepped inside together. As they closed, I became intensely aware of how small the space was, how close we stood. 5 floors of descent had never felt so long, or so brief. "Thomas," Claire said as the elevator neared the lobby, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it at work. "I've been meaning to ask." The doors opened to the bustling lobby. Whatever she'd been about to say lost in the sudden noise and movement. We walked together through the revolving doors and into the crisp October evening, the streets of Boston glowing under early streetlights. "What were you going to say?" I asked as we paused on the sidewalk, our breath visible in the chilly air. Claire looked at me for a long moment, then shook her head. It can wait. Let's not keep the team waiting. Harlow's was already packed when we arrived, the agency group having claimed a large section near the back. Alex spotted us immediately, his eyebrows shooting up as he noticed Claire and me arriving together. He made a beeline toward us, 2 drinks already in hand.
Boss lady! Thomas!
Perfect timing. We're just about to toast the birthday boy. He handed us each a glass of what looked like expensive whiskey. Claire, did Thomas tell you about the little wager we have going around the office? My blood ran cold. Alex? No, he didn't? Claire said, her expression unreadable as she accepted the drink. What kind of wager? Alex opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. It's nothing. Office nonsense. I shot him a warning look that could have melted steel. Right, Alex said, smirking. Office nonsense. Anyway, come join us. Parker's about to make some ridiculous speech about turning the big 3-5. As Alex led Claire toward the group, she glanced back at me with a raised eyebrow, curiosity evident in her expression. I followed, feeling like a man walking toward his execution. The next 2 hours were torture of the most exquisite kind. Claire sat across from me, laughing and talking with our colleagues in a way she rarely did at the office. The professional barriers came down one by one as the drinks flowed. I learned that she played classical piano, had a rescue dog named Shakespeare, and once considered becoming an art historian before advertising captured her imagination. Each new detail was a treasure I stored away, building a more complete picture of the woman behind the boss I'd admired from a distance. What I didn't expect was how often I caught her looking at me, not with the evaluating gaze of a superior, but with something warmer, more curious. Each time our eyes met across the table, something electric passed between us, a silent acknowledgement of whatever this tension was that had been building for 3 years. So, Claire, Parker said after his 3rd drink, his filter clearly diminishing, single woman, running the creative department of a major agency. How do you have time for dating? I nearly choked on my drink, but Claire merely smiled, swirling the ice in her glass. Who says I'm trying to date? She glanced at me briefly. Maybe I'm waiting for the right person to make a move. The table fell silent for a beat, and I could feel Alex's eyes boring into the side of my head. The moment stretched, taut with possibility, until Claire smoothly changed the subject, asking Parker about his plans for his birthday weekend. As the night wore on, people began to leave in 2s and 3s. By 11, our large group had dwindled to just 5, Parker, Alex and his wife Nadia, Claire, and myself. The bar had quieted, the lighting dimmed further, creating an intimacy that made my pulse quicken. Alex stood suddenly, pulling Nadia to her feet. Well, we should get going. Early morning tomorrow. He looked pointedly at me, then at Claire. Parker, didn't you say you needed to catch the last train? Parker blinked, clearly confused. What? No, Yes, you did. Alex insisted, practically dragging him up. Come on, birthday boy, we'll share a cab to the station. I watched in horror and fascination as Alex orchestrated the most obvious exit in history, leaving Claire and me alone at the table. She watched them go with amusement dancing in her eyes, then turned that gaze on me. Subtle, she said, taking a sip of her water. She'd switched from whiskey hours ago, always mindful of maintaining some professional boundaries. About as subtle as a bulldozer, I agreed, my mouth suddenly dry. I should apologize for Alex. He's invested in your love life, Claire supplied, her voice light but her eyes serious. I felt heat creep up my neck. Something like that. Claire leaned forward, her silver blonde hair falling like a curtain around her face. Is that what the office wager is about, Thomas? My love life and yours. The moment of truth had arrived, delivered not by my courage, but by my colleagues' complete lack of discretion. I took a deep breath, deciding that honesty was the only path forward that preserved any dignity. They're betting on whether I'll ever work up the courage to ask you out. I admitted, meeting her gaze directly for perhaps the first time, without the shield of work between us. Alex threatened to do it for me, if I didn't do it tonight. Something shifted in Claire's expression, surprise, followed by something softer. And what were you going to do? Ask me out or let Alex humiliate you? I don't know, I said, surprising myself with my candor. The professional part of me knows it's inappropriate and complicated. The rest of me has wanted to ask you to dinner since about 2 weeks after I started working for you. 3 years is a long time to want something and not pursue it, Claire said quietly. My heart hammered in my chest. You're my boss. Yes. She nodded, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. And that complicates things, but it doesn't make them impossible. Hope flared inside me, bright and dangerous. Claire, let me ask you something first, she interrupted, her expression suddenly serious. Is this about the office pool? About winning a bet or proving something to Alex and the others? No, I said immediately, the word coming out more forcefully than I intended. I lowered my voice, leaning slightly closer. This isn't about them. It's about how every morning I look forward to seeing you walk through the office doors. How you're the first person I want to share good news with. How you challenge me to be better, as a writer, as a professional, as a person. The words tumbled out, 3 years of carefully contained feelings, breaking through the dam I'd built. It's about how sometimes, when we're working late and you laugh at something I say, I think maybe, just maybe, you might feel something too. And then I remember the organizational chart and tell myself I'm imagining it. Claire was silent for a long moment, her eyes never leaving mine. Then, slowly, she reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. You weren't imagining it. The simple touch, the quiet confession, sent a shockwave through me. I turned my hand over, our palms meeting, fingers intertwining in a gesture that felt more intimate than any kiss could have been. Thomas, Claire said, my name sounding different in her voice now, laden with possibility. Ask me. The world narrowed to just this moment, this woman, this chance. I took a deep breath and jumped. Claire Bennett, would you have dinner with me? Not as my boss, not to discuss work, just us. Time seemed to suspend as I waited for her answer, the background noise of the bar fading away. Then Claire's lips curved into that smile, the one I'd always felt was just for me, and she said the words I never expected to hear. I'm tired of waiting. What took you so long? Joy shot through me like lightning, followed immediately by confusion. You were waiting for me to ask you out. Claire laughed, the sound rich and warm. Thomas, do you think I normally spend 2 hours discussing comma placement with my copywriters? Or personally bring them coffee when I know they're working late, or find excuses to include them in client meetings they don't strictly need to attend? I thought you were grooming me for promotion, I said weakly, the reality of the situation slowly dawning on me. I was, she admitted. But that's not all it was. She squeezed my hand. I've been very careful, probably too careful. There are professional boundaries that matter to me. But yes, I've been waiting, hoping you'd make a move that would let me know I wasn't crossing a line. The revelation left me momentarily speechless. All this time, while I'd been admiring from afar, constructing elaborate justifications for why it could never work, she'd been waiting for me to take a chance. So what now? I asked, suddenly acutely aware that we were still boss and employee, still entangled in the professional web that had kept us apart. Claire's expression grew more serious. Now we're careful. Transparent. I'll speak with HR tomorrow about disclosure forms. We'll need to adjust some reporting structures. Her professional side was already problem-solving, but her fingers remained intertwined with mine. And we'll have dinner, Saturday. My place. I'll cook. You cook. I couldn't help but smile at this new information. There's a lot you don't know about me yet, Thomas. The promise in those words made my heart race, and I'm looking forward to you finding out. Don't forget to comment below with your thoughts. Have you ever taken a leap of faith that changed everything? I'd love to hear your stories. We left Harlow's together, walking side by side through the quiet streets. The night air had grown colder, and when Claire shivered slightly, I offered her my scarf. She accepted it with a smile that felt like the beginning of something I'd been waiting for my entire life. Can I walk you home? I asked, suddenly aware that this was real, that we were no longer just boss and employee pretending not to notice each other across conference room tables. I'd like that, she said. It's not far. We walked in comfortable silence for a while, the city quiet around us, until Claire spoke again. There's an industry dinner next Thursday. The Blackwell Awards. I know. The whole creative department is going. I'd been dreading it. Another evening of watching Claire, from across a crowded room, professional smiles, and carefully measured conversations. I was thinking, she said, her voice casual but her eyes intent when she looked at me, maybe we could attend together. As a date. The suggestion took me by surprise. Are you sure? The whole industry will be there. People will talk. Claire stopped walking, turning to face me under the glow of a streetlight. Let them talk. I've spent 3 years being careful about what others might think, about optics and propriety and power dynamics. She reached up, adjusting the scarf around her neck, my scarf. I'm tired of waiting for the right moment. This is the right moment. In that instant, I saw the courage that had made Claire Bennett one of the youngest creative directors in the agency's history, the same courage that had allowed her to wait patiently for me to find my own bravery. Then yes, I said, feeling lighter than I had in years. It's a date. We resumed walking, and after a moment, Claire slipped her hand into mine. The simple gesture felt revolutionary, a public declaration of something new and fragile, and full of promise. When we reached her building, a converted warehouse in one of Boston's trendier neighborhoods, we paused at the entrance. The moment hung between us, charged with 3 years of restraint and newly acknowledged feelings. This is me, Claire said, making no move to go inside. Claire, I began, uncertain how to navigate this transformed relationship. I want to do this right. She studied me for a moment, then smiled. You know what I admire most about you, Thomas? Your words, your writing, it's always perfect. Thoughtful, precise, but it's the way you care about getting it right that sets you apart. She stepped closer. So trust yourself. There's no script for this part. Taking her advice, I stopped overthinking and followed instinct instead. I leaned forward, my hand gently cupping her cheek, and kissed her. After a moment's pause, a heartbeat of surprise, Claire responded, her arms sliding around my neck as she kissed me back. It was gentle and questioning at first, then deeper, 3 years of unspoken desire finally finding expression. When we broke apart, both slightly breathless, Claire's eyes were bright with emotion. Worth the wait, she whispered. Definitely, I agreed, reluctantly stepping back. Saturday, she confirmed. I'll text you my address. I watched her disappear into her building, before turning to walk the 10 blocks to my own apartment, my mind replaying every moment of the evening. By the time I reached my door, my phone buzzed with a text. From Claire. In case you're overthinking on your walk home, yes, this is real. Yes, I'm sure. And yes, I've wanted this for a long time. I smiled at my phone, typing back. Not overthinking. Just happy. Good night, Claire. That night, I slept better than I had in years, waking to the sound of my alarm with an unfamiliar feeling of possibility. The office would be different now. We would be different, and navigating that change would require care and consideration. But for the first time, the future I'd imagined only in quiet moments of fantasy felt within reach. When I arrived at the office, earlier than usual, Claire was already there, on the phone in her glass-walled office. She looked up as I passed, and the smile she gave me, private, warm, meant just for me, confirmed that last night hadn't been a dream. Alex ambushed me at the coffee machine, his expression eager. Well, what happened after we left? Did you do it? Did you ask her out? I took a deliberate sip of my coffee, enjoying his impatience. I did, and Alex was practically bouncing. What did she say? I thought about Claire's words, about the kiss that followed, about the text that assured me this was real. She said she was tired of waiting. Alex's jaw dropped. No way. You're making that up? I'm not, I said, unable to suppress my smile. But if you tell anyone before we've sorted things out with HR, I will personally ensure you never win another office bet again. Before Alex could respond, Claire emerged from her office, making her way toward us with purpose. She nodded professionally at both of us. Morning, gentlemen. Thomas, I need you for the Westridge pitch at 11. And Alex, your copy for the Taylor campaign is overdue. Yes, boss, Alex said, shooting me a look that promised a thorough interrogation later. As he walked away, Claire met my eyes briefly. My office, 5 minutes. All business, except for the slight curve of her lips that suggested something else entirely. I watched her walk back to her office, the confidence in her stride, the authority in her posture, and marveled at how one evening had changed everything and nothing. She was still Claire Bennett, creative director. Still my boss, still the most impressive person in any room. But now, she was also something more. Something we were defining together, step by careful step. If you're enjoying this story, hit like and subscribe for more content like this. I post new stories every week and love hearing from all of you. 5 minutes later, I knocked on her door frame, folder in hand as always, the perfect picture of professional propriety. Claire looked up, gesturing me inside. "Close the door," she said, and I complied, taking my usual seat across from her desk. For a moment, we simply looked at each other, the familiar setting suddenly charged with new meaning. "I spoke with HR this morning," Claire said, her professional tone belied by the warmth in her eyes. "They're preparing the appropriate disclosure forms. In the meantime, I've arranged for you to report directly to Michael for performance reviews and compensation discussions." I nodded, impressed but not surprised by her efficiency. Claire had always been 10 steps ahead of everyone else. That was fast. "I don't waste time once I've made a decision," she said, a hint of that directness I admired slipping into her voice. Then, softening slightly, "Are you having second thoughts?" "Not one," I said without hesitation. "You?" Claire shook her head, a small smile playing at her lips. "Good. Now, about the Westridge pitch." And just like that, we slipped back into our professional roles, discussing strategy, reviewing copy, preparing for the client meeting. But underneath the familiar rhythm of our work partnership, something new hummed between us, electric and promising. Later that day, as we presented to the Westridge team, I watched Claire command the room with her usual grace and authority. The clients were impressed, as they always were when Claire led a pitch. What they couldn't see, what only I noticed, was how she occasionally glanced my way, a silent acknowledgement passing between us each time. When the meeting ended with handshakes and promises of signed contracts, the rest of the team filtered out, leaving Claire and me to gather the presentation materials. "That went well," I said, collecting the folders scattered across the conference table. "It did," Claire agreed, shutting down the projector. "Your copy on the final slide? That was new?" I nodded, remembering the words I'd added just that morning. "Some chances are worth taking, no matter how long the odds dog." "Inspired by recent events?" Claire asked, her voice low enough that only I could hear. "Maybe," I admitted. "Is that unprofessional?" Claire considered this for a moment, then shook her head. "It's honest, and it resonated with the client." She picked up her portfolio, ready to leave, but paused at the door. "That's what I've always admired about your work, Thomas. You find the truth in everything." The words stayed with me for the rest of the day, through meetings and deadlines, and the curious glances from colleagues who'd clearly been updated by Alex. By evening, the office had transformed into a hive of speculation, whispers following me from the copy room to the kitchen and back to my desk.
Share this video if you believe in taking chances.
Sometimes the biggest risks bring the greatest rewards. I was preparing to leave when my phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "Meet me on the roof." The agency occupied the top 3 floors of our building, with the roof reserved for summer parties and the occasional executive cigar break. In October, with the chill of approaching winter in the air, it would be deserted. I took the stairs to the roof access door, pushing it open to find Claire standing at the edge, looking out over the Boston skyline as twilight painted the sky in deepening shades of blue. She turned at the sound of the door, and I was struck again by how different she looked outside the confines of her office, more relaxed, more herself. "Hiding from the gossip mill?" I asked, joining her at the railing. "Providing fuel for it, more likely," she said with a wry smile. "But I needed some air. And to see you without 20 pairs of eyes analyzing our every interaction. It'll die down," I assured her, though I wasn't entirely convinced. Office romances, especially between a boss and her direct report, were perpetual sources of fascination. "I know," Claire said. "I've been through this before. Not this specifically, but being the subject of office talk. When I was promoted to creative director at 31, the rumors were. She trailed off, shaking her head. People will always talk. What matters is what's real. I nodded, understanding now why she'd been so cautious, so professional for so long. And what's real is this, I said, gesturing between us. Whatever this is becoming. Claire turned to face me fully, the last light of day illuminating her features. Do you know when I first noticed you, Thomas? Really noticed you? I shook my head, curious. It was about a month after you started. We were in a creative meeting for that pharmaceutical client, the one with the impossible brief and the tiny budget. Everyone was pitching safe, conventional ideas. And then you spoke up. Her eyes softened at the memory. You suggested something completely different. Risky. When Peterson shot it down, you didn't back down. You defended your concept with such passion and conviction. We didn't get the account, I remembered, surprised that this was the moment that had stood out to her. No, but that wasn't the point, Claire said. You showed courage. Creative courage. It's the rarest quality in this business. She stepped closer. I respected you professionally from that moment. The rest, that came later, gradually, until one day I realized I was finding excuses to work late when you were working late. To review your copy personally instead of delegating it. The confession left me speechless. All this time, I'd assumed my feelings were one-sided, or at best, a recent development on her part. Why didn't you say something? I finally asked. Claire's laugh held a touch of self-deprecation. Because I'm your boss, Thomas. Because making the first move would have been an abuse of my position. Because I needed to be certain it wasn't just me projecting or misreading the situation. She looked at me directly, vulnerability clear in her expression. Because rejection from you would have been difficult to recover from. The admission that Claire Bennett, the most confident person I knew, had been afraid of rejection from me shifted something fundamental in my understanding of her, of us. Well, I said, taking her hand, I'm glad Alex and his ridiculous betting pool finally pushed me to take the risk, even if I waited 3 years too long. Claire's fingers intertwined with mine. Maybe the timing is exactly right. 3 years ago, we were different people. I was still proving myself as creative director. You were finding your voice as a writer. And now? I asked. Now, she said, we're ready. For whatever comes next. I pulled her closer, the city lights creating a backdrop of twinkling stars behind her. I liked the sound of that. This time when we kissed, there was no hesitation, no uncertainty. Just the certainty of two people who had finally found the courage to acknowledge what had been building between them for years. When we broke apart, Claire rested her forehead against mine. We should go back downstairs, she said reluctantly, separately, for appearance's sake. Right. I agreed, though neither of us moved. HR forms and all that. Claire smiled, stepping back. I'll go first. Give it 5 minutes before you follow. Professional even now, thinking of the details, the optics, the proper way to handle our evolving relationship. I watched her walk to the door, admiring her strength, her certainty, the way she navigated every situation with grace. Just before she disappeared back into the building, she turned back. Thomas, I'm really looking forward to Saturday. Me too, I said simply, knowing she would understand all the emotion contained in those 2 words. After she left, I stayed on the roof a while longer, watching the city transition from day to night, feeling like my life was making a similar transition from what had been to what could be. All because of a dare, a bet, and the courage to finally take a chance on something that mattered. When I returned to my desk to collect my things, I found a note tucked under my keyboard. In Claire's elegant handwriting, it simply said, "Worth the wait, see." I smiled, tucking the note into my wallet, a tangible reminder that some things, some people, are worth waiting for, no matter how long it takes. The whispers continued in the days that followed. Some colleagues were openly curious, others maintained a professional distance, and Alex was insufferably smug about his role in finally making it happen. Through it all, Claire and I navigated our new reality with care, professional during work hours, gradually exploring our personal connection after hours, and during the increasingly frequent text conversations that filled our evenings apart. By Saturday, when I stood at Claire's door, flowers in hand and heart in throat, I felt like I'd been waiting for this moment my entire life. When she opened the door, dressed in jeans and a soft sweater, hair loose around her shoulders, I understood with sudden clarity that she was what I'd been looking for all along. Not just Claire Bennett, creative director, but Claire herself, brilliant, complex, unexpectedly vulnerable beneath her confident exterior. "Hey," she said, a touch of nervousness in her smile that endeared her to me even more. "Hey," I replied, handing her the flowers. "These are for you." As she invited me inside, I caught the scent of something delicious cooking. Her apartment was exactly as I'd imagined it, elegant but comfortable, walls lined with bookshelves and art, a piano in the corner bearing witness to the parts of her I was just beginning to discover. That night, over homemade risotto and wine, we talked for hours, not as boss and employee, but as Thomas and Claire. I learned about her childhood in Connecticut, her years at art school before switching to marketing, the mentor who had changed her trajectory. She listened as I shared stories of my own path, the creative writing degree my parents had feared would leave me unemployable, the advertising internship that had opened my eyes to a different kind of storytelling. To taking chances, Claire said later, raising her glass in a toast, and to the insufferable colleagues who sometimes push us to take them. I laughed, clinking my glass against hers. To Alex and his betting pool. May we never tell him he was right. As the evening deepened into night, I found myself thinking that some stories don't need dramatic twists or tragic obstacles to be meaningful. Sometimes the most profound narratives are the simplest. Two people finding their way to each other, despite the complications, despite the waiting. "What are you thinking?" Claire asked, catching me watching her as she poured more wine. "That I'm glad I finally asked," I said honestly. "And that I wish I'd done it sooner." Claire smiled, setting down the bottle and moving closer to me on the couch. "I think we found each other exactly when we were supposed to." As her lips met mine, I knew she was right. Some things can't be rushed. Some connections need time to develop, to strengthen, to reach their full potential. Our story, still in its early chapters, had been 3 years in the making and was all the richer for the waiting. In the months that followed, we learned to balance our professional and personal relationships. Claire was still my boss at work, still held me to the highest standards, still challenged me to be a better writer and strategist. But after hours, we discovered each other in new ways, building something that felt both exciting and enduring. When the Blackwell Awards arrived, we attended together as planned, our first official public appearance as a couple. The industry buzz was predictable, but short-lived, overshadowed by Claire winning Creative Director of the Year and our agency taking home Campaign of the Year for the Henderson project we'd worked on together. "Quite a night," I said as we shared a cab home afterward, her award nestled in her lap. "Quite a year," she corrected, her fingers linked with mine. "And it's just beginning?" She was right, of course. Claire Bennett usually was. What had started with a dare, with 3 years of waiting, with one simple question, had become the most important journey of my life, one I was grateful to be taking with her by my side. The truth is, sometimes the greatest risks we take aren't jumping out of airplanes or changing careers or moving across the world. Sometimes the greatest risk is admitting how we feel to the person who matters most, especially when that person has the power to shape not just our hearts, but our daily lives, our professional futures. But as I learned from Claire, the things most worth having are often on the other side of our greatest fears. And sometimes the person we're afraid to reach for has been waiting, all along, for us to find the courage to take that first step. So if you're watching this and holding back from taking a chance on something or someone that matters to you, consider this your sign, your dare, your moment to ask the question you've been afraid to ask. Because you never know, the answer might be, "I'm tired of waiting." What took you so long? Where are you watching from? Comment below and let me know. And if you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more content just like this. You're Your support means everything.